Hey, what's up guys, how's it going? So the Dreamcast and the Game Boy Advance, two wonderful systems, but unfortunately, one of them didn't last long. Rest in peace to the Dreamcast. Now, I believe I made a similar video to this topic before, but when the Dreamcast sort of died, Sega dropped a bunch of Dreamcast games on a bunch of different consoles, from the PS2 to the OG Xbox, and like in this video, we're going to be talking about the Game Boy. Believe it or not, a lot of Dreamcast games landed on the Game Boy. Now, some turned out great, some turned out bad. Let's talk about it. And by the way, if you want me to talk about something weird or obscure from the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, tell me down in the comments. But I want to talk about the Game Boy Advance for a little bit. It was a cool system that was released in the early 2000s, I believe 2001, and a bunch of games were released for it. And to some degree, the Game Boy Advance could handle 3D. But enough about that, let's just talk about some of the Dreamcast games that landed on the Game Boy Advance. Alright, Jet Set Radio. Now, this is a weird game to bring to the Game Boy, but Sega did it. And I gotta be honest, it's kind of a 2.5D-ish game. Similar to the Tony Hawk games where you move in a horizontal pattern. You're on roller skates and you're doing graffiti. Unfortunately, I don't have this game. This is way out of pocket for me. Although I do want to get this game one day, but seeing from the way it looks, it honestly looks interesting. You know, just doing graffiti patterns and stuff like that. Obviously, Jet Set Radio doesn't translate to the Game Boy very well, but Sega kinda pulled it off. I don't know how the graffiti mechanics work, but hey, it is what it is. And of course, as you may assume, Jet Set Radio does not sound good on the Game Boy. Jet Set Radio! Well, my god, that's really got to be irritating to the ears. But enough about that, it's just your same old Jet Set Radio just crunched down into a Game Boy Advance cartridge. On to the next game. Alright, Space Channel 5 for the Game Boy. Now, this is a very interesting title. In fact, I feel like Space Channel 5 is the most easiest game to translate to the Game Boy Advance. It's just dancing aliens and shit. But for the most part, it's good. It's just like Jet Set Radio. It's the same Dreamcast game, just crunched down. But unfortunately, this isn't Jet Set Radio. Space Channel 5 is a bit different. With it being crunched down, it kind of loses most of its charm. I'll just say that. It still holds up well, I guess, but my god, that price tag is fucking insane. I don't know why it's that price, but hey, let's just move on. Alright, Choo Choo Rocket. Now, another simple game to translate to the Game Boy Advance. It's honestly the same thing as the Dreamcast game, and I know I say that a lot, but this is literally the same thing, just in 2D. I will say the music might be crunched down a little bit, but hey, it is what it is. And believe it or not, this game is actually reasonably priced, so you can go get it for yourself. At the end of the day though, and I actually hear this game is harder than the home console version, so if you want to, go check it out. Sega Rally. Now, this was a bit of a weird one to port to the Game Boy Advance, but Sega did it anyway, and it actually translates pretty well. I mean, sure, it's crunched down, but it's still the same game. In fact, I heard this game had a lot more tracks and cars compared to the regular console version. Like I said in the intro, the Game Boy Advance attempts to do 3D, and to be honest, this game does it somewhat well. I don't know how well controlling a game like this would go well on the Game Boy Advance, but still, it's pretty good for the most part. And if you want to get this game for yourself, it's pretty much impossible. This game is honestly kinda rare and really expensive. Either way, the game's great. If you can, play it on an emulator. I don't know, do whatever you gotta do, but this game looks great. Alright, Virtua Tennis. Now, to be honest, I'm not a big tennis fan, so all I see is a basic tennis game, but because it was on the Dreamcast, I gotta mention it. Of course, you can play as the Williams sisters, you got a couple courts, you can play as fictional characters. There's a lot of options in this game, and to be honest, it's not really for me, but it's dirt cheap, and if you're a fan of tennis games, go check it out. Alright, that was all the Dreamcast games on the Game Boy Advance. Hey, if I missed anything, tell me down in the comments, and yeah, if you want to, like, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, no rush, and tell me down below. What's your favorite Dreamcast game or Game Boy game? Tell me down in the comments, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.